Recording in progress.
Man, that's that lady from Google Maps.
So get ready for some tricks up these sleeves, alright? Watch your bones, pal.
They not. Nope, they not.
Ready?
No, you're not. No, you're not. Really ready. Come on. No, you're not. Really ready. Hey.
Are you ready?
And welcome to another edition of The Media Shift, a podcast where we talk with radio professionals from around the country and talk to them about all of the changes that are currently going on in the industry and all the changes that they've seen in their tenure as broadcasters. So we're going to have a great guest on the show today, Dennis Schetter. He has been a radio broadcaster all around the country, currently a producer for the Ben Jarofsky Show and a show, or I should say, and a company called Spoken Layer. So we're going to talk to him in just a moment. Hang on.
Yeah.
And welcome back to the Media Shift. With us today, one of my best friends in the world, but also one of the best radio guys that I know also, Dennis Schetter. Dennis, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, buddy, I'm good. How are you?
Hey, I didn't mean to overdo it with the love fest there, but you're one of my best radio buddies, so I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to do this podcast with me.
No, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. Where was that music from?
That's actually from a Chicago-based band. You live in Chicago currently. I lived in Chicago for a long time. Pseudo Slang, a great friend of mine, Josh, Sicky Sick, and basically a couple of guys that he works with have put together this music. So you can always check it out, pseudoslang.com if you're interested. I'm going to throw a plug in at the end of the show too for everybody else.
Right on. And you ran it by him, right? They're good with it.
Yeah, no, it's completely cleared. They gave me the okay.
Cool.
Don't have to pay them any extra fees or anything like that. They're just really cool guys and they want to get their music out to the world. So I'm more than happy to share it.
Pseudo Slang?
Pseudo Slang.
Everybody check out Pseudo Slang. Find them right now. Just pull up Pseudo Slang. You probably don't have to spell it right. It'll
you can
autocorrect it or something. You'll find it. Just look it up.
You can pseudo spell it and you might even get it right. So those guys are awesome, but I definitely want to get into the podcast because I don't have you for all night too long tonight, Dennis. Thank you so much for your time. You've been working in radio for a long time. We started out in radio right around the same time. I want to say 2002, 2003.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it all. I shouldn't say we've seen it all, but we've seen a lot. I mean, things have changed.
So I'll meet people who were like from radio back in the day and they talk about like cutting tape, like the art of cutting tape. Like I wouldn't be working in radio. I think I would have got fired like a lot. That sounds really hard.
Yeah, definitely. That seemed like it required a different kind of artisanship, if you will. But I mean, if you think about it, you really do the same thing in digital.
I'd be like the dude without a middle finger hanging out somewhere, like, because that just sounds dangerous.
Okay, it is a lot more.
I was never good at cutting tape.
A lot safer nowadays, we'll say, than it was back in the olden times. But you are basically that for the modern era. You cut up, and I mean, most of your day and your job is spent cutting up audio, like
right
in a metaphysical, not necessarily a physical sense.
Like the mini disc days.
Yeah. Oh man, the mini disc days. I love those. I mean, some of the young kids, if they watch this or listen, they might not know. Look it up. It's a cool square little piece of plastic that you'd shove into a box and would carry about 80 minutes of high quality audio. So look into it, kids.
It's like the floppy's older sophisticated cousin.
Yeah, it's like the floppy got like a tattoo or something and became cool.
Younger listeners, check that out. Floppy, you know what a floppy is. But anyway.
They're thinking flip flops, man. They don't know what we're talking about, but it's okay. You've done a lot of stuff in radio. You've worked in a number of different positions. I mean, you've been everything from interns to producers. You've worn a lot of hats. What would you say drew you into radio in the first place?
I think when I was a kid, I would have my own little like radio. I would take a tape, you know what I mean? And like, hit play and record at the same time and do your own little radio things while the radio's on. You know what I mean? So I would do that a lot.
Plug in that microphone input that was on there. Yep.
But then specifically, I remember being in high school my senior year, and we had like some class about radio. We had to do a radio show, and I sucked at everything in high school. And this is the one thing where like I did well in. Like it was supposed to be like 15 minutes, like or something. Like it was 15 minutes on the nose. I don't know, but that's when it kind of clicked for me. Like, okay, I think I can do this. And then luckily, where we're from, Lewis and Clark Community College, fantastic radio program. Went there, and it's kind of went from there.
That kind of just snowballed, if you will.
Yeah. But for real though, I sucked at everything. And
this is a common theme. I've talked with a number of radio broadcasters who've been in the industry now for a long time on these podcasts, and it seems like a common theme is when we started and we were young, we had no idea what we were doing, not just in radio, but in life. Like we were just awkward individual human beings, and I think that's what kind of is good for radio, because it gives you a chance to like become yourself and become confident in yourself.
And I tell you, there's one thing too I've noticed with radio. Sorry to get us sidetracked here again, but pro wrestling and radio. There's a lot of people in radio who like pro wrestling. I don't know what it is, but I think run this by other guests that you talk with, and I bet they'll agree.
I definitely will. I'm a big Stone Cold Steve Austin fan. I'm not gonna lie. But we want to keep it to the topic today because I don't want to take too much of your time.
Hell yeah.
You're an important guy up there in Chicago, and I appreciate it. There's so many jobs that you've worked at where you were a producer. Producer means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yeah.
But what does it mean to you to be a producer of a show on a radio station or on a podcast?
Well, it just depends, where you're at, I guess, the company you work for. Producer, like you said, it has a lot of meanings. In essence, I guess the producer is the guy that's kind of, laying out the feel of the show, laying out the format, what segments are we going to do, just kind of, bringing up the show.
Yeah, kind of steering the ship a little bit, if you will.
Right. And like, it takes some brutal honesty that I'm not really that good at. I'll be honest. Like where it's like, if it's not a good show, you can be like, hey, that show wasn't that great. It takes, you got to be that person too. So, the rocks come with the farm, buddy. You got to do the bad crap too.
Yeah, no, that was
like
one of the things. That's true. I mean, I've worked in a few producer positions, and sometimes you have to be the mom that kind of just tells them like, hey, you did great, but you can still do better. Let's keep working on this, Bobby.
Right. But just the person who kind of oversees the show, the one that's kind of, overlooking it all, and just kind of, because when you're doing the show, you kind of have a different point of view.
Yeah.
But if you're someone who works on the show every day, you're able to see it without kind of being in it. You could be in the show, but you kind of got to look at it at a different angle. You know what I mean? So I think that's the role of the producer, the one that kind of makes sure the overall show is good, I guess,
Yeah, exactly. Following a format of some sort and making sure that you're staying on task. That's a huge part of it. So, and as far as that goes, what has changed about it since you started? Like in the beginning, maybe you weren't doing the social media stuff for shows, or you weren't doing any additional like online after show podcasts. When did you start to see it change as far as, oh, wow, now we're doing more web stuff? When did you notice that?
I felt like it was slower than a lot of people may think. I just felt like it took radio a while. Well, in my experience, at least, like radio was kind of like, love radio to death. Thank you for everything you've done for me, but a little stubborn at times. You know what I mean? Like, oh, let's do this HD radio. Like, what is that? Like, I think the future is, social media and online. And it really, I remember sports radio, to be honest, like living back in St. Louis, listening to sports radio, and they were bringing up like hashtags and like tweets and all that like that got into the format of your show. You know what I mean? Where you're reading tweets and talking about Twitter. I remember Twitter was the real big one. It was probably like 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
That when Twitter started really, the fuddy-duddies over in radio are talking about it. Okay, now we're playing game.
Yep. I mean, it took a while for radio, and I had a discussion with a few other people about this, and I think it was because, and this is just my personal opinions, and you can give me yours. but I feel like radio really had its heyday in the 80s and 90s. Like there was a ton of advertising dollars. There was a ton of stations. People's ears and eyes were focused on station dials and listening to what was going on them.
Oh, and if the movies that I've watched from the 70s are true, it seemed like the 70s were awesome for radio as well.
It seemed much more laid back in the 70s for radio.
Like those movies where the kids like win the tickets.
Yeah.
And they go to like the concert or whatever, you know what I mean? Like that seemed like radio was awesome back in the 70s.
Oh yeah. No, I mean my mom back in the 70s had won an entire like 500 records from a record store from a radio station.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. And I think that was partially what drew us all in originally was we were people that were fans. We were listeners. And then we realized, wow, I might be able to do this. And now for kids that are growing up now that don't even think about careers in radio because they don't even know what a radio is, or they think it's just the thing you connect your Bluetooth to play music. Like that's, it's a whole new world for them. But at the same time, they are in the same boat that we were at that point. You know, they're trying to figure out what to do and how to do it and finding a creative outlet or a creative element that they can put forward to the world while they're finding who they are. Do you agree with any of that?
Oh, honestly, I think radio, it'll always be around. I just think no one's bragging about listening to the radio now. You know what I mean? You're not, if you meet someone who's older and they know like a pop song, there's a good chance that they listen to the radio. You know what I mean? Why do they know that song? You're like 50. Oh, you actually listen to the radio still, and those are the songs that are on the popular channels. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
I think and like Uber and Lyft drivers always have radio on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's.
So I mean, it's not gone for the youth yet.
No, it's not gone from the youth yet. It's like not in their top 5 things that they're trying to do, but it's there. It's just, I don't know, like it.
That's great. No. And that really brings me to my next point that I wanted to get to. Like, what can radio stations and TV stations and things like that, what can they do to engage in this world to where they're not number 5 or 6 on the things that the kids might do?
Right.
And they become 2 or 3. How do they take out Pandora or Netflix, or how does radio regain relevance, I guess?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned television in there. I think television has made some steps ahead of radio. Mm-hmm. But radio, I feel I don't know, like let's go all the way back to the day where they cut a deal with like record labels and like that was the one way you could listen to music, you know what I mean? And that was the only way where you can kind of hear music for like, without buying the record.
Yeah.
For so long.
It was accessible.
Maybe that format needs to kind of be looked at a little bit, now in 2021, because there's so many ways to, get music, you know what I mean? Like that's one thing I think that maybe radio can do. Because like, yeah, now I'm working in like podcasting and here it is, like my job, we're in short form audio and it's basically like the bare bones basics of what I was doing in radio. You know what I mean? Like recording, doing a voiceover with not that much music under it. And, just really bare bones, like audio stuff. And it's kind of killing it right now. You know what I mean? So maybe radio can kind of look at other angles, you know what I mean? Because back in the day, like, the record labels and the music, that's a cool thing. And that was a way to make money. But maybe now, there's other ways to use it.
Exactly. No. And I think you're onto something big here. Cause I really think that there's something to just radio stations finding new ways to get dollars.
Yeah.
Instead of relying on the old model of because unfortunately, it's become much more cost effective to advertise online and to target advertise with streaming and location data. So terrestrial radio is struggling a little bit. It's made it harder to sell ad time. So I think in a way, terrestrial radio can kind of just utilize the internet as much as they can and capitalize on it, create as much content, do a lot of short form content, give away a lot of stuff. Because the thing is, radio has to understand you got to get people back, and to get people back, you got to give them something.
Yeah.
Something they're not getting somewhere else. So I don't know what the answer necessarily is for the long-term future of it. I think radio is still going to be strong for a while. But the consensus I've got from most of the other guests is that from the baby boomer era, those are the group that are still locked to their radios. And we don't really have to worry about them going anywhere. But then you've got the youth who are all on TikTok and all on Instagram and all on
Right.
Twitter. So it's like trying to focus their attention back to what used to be the cool thing is the fight.
Right. And, say what you will about them. NPR kind of has, like, I think that may be kind of a good way to go in the future, kind of what they're doing, but not so like heady and like,
Yeah.
you can do just like, just talk radio where it's like, different things, like
Yeah, it's more personable, not
without the
quite.
political, you know what I mean? Like that's one thing too. Like, hey, talk radio can be more than something about like left versus right, you know what I mean? Or politics or, you know what I mean? Democrat, Republic. Like I've worked in political radio and it's like, okay, talk radio is cool, but like you could probably do more things than talk about politics and radio. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. I mean, it really be okay. If you think about it in a reverse model, think about how when you think of podcasting, you think there's a podcast for everything. Okay. Well, that's the truth. It's like radio can probably stand to diversify a little bit and try new things and not make themselves so closed into a specific idea. I understand you want to have strong branding and you want things to appear a certain way and you want to be consistent. But the problem is if you're too consistent with the same thing, it's like a radio bit.
Yeah.
You do the same radio bit every single day for 6 months, it gets old. So you change it in and out, you spice it up, you do different bits, you find ways to change it. And that's what I think radio's got to keep doing to stay relevant and to keep going, because we're really fighting against a lot of competition. I mean, just things like, when you talk about companies like Spotify and Pandora being worth billions and billions of dollars, like how can you as a radio station that has, when you compare things like radio to Spotify, okay, even that, radio stations have so much cost and overhead. Like that, you've got a tower, you've got transmitters, you've got equipment that's got to constantly be monitored, you've got board operators that have got to be paid, you've got salespeople, you've got this whole huge staff that's required in one small place to bring in enough revenue to cover it. And then you've got a place like Spotify or like Pandora that's selling ads to Dove soap for X amount of dollars for a 30-second spot because it's getting to 10 million people. Like those dollars are all going to different places. And I think that radio's got to do what they can to compete. And I've been a firm believer, for a long time that the radio has to adapt. Like we have to keep changing. I mean, radio to me is just like a living person. It's like, if you want to keep moving forward, you got to keep adapting. If you keep doing the same thing forever, you'll stay in the same place.
Yeah. And radio, I don't know. I feel I don't want this to just be like, let's bash radio.
No, not at all.
I felt like, they were slow to go here a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I said, like, I feel like there's these imaginary walls they kind of put up with like, okay, this is how we sell things. This is the kind of show we run, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like I think the walls kind of need to come down a little bit because like I was saying, like there's media form, there's short form audio, there's all kinds of things like the big giant board. Like, you know what I mean? You go to a radio station, and you're like, oh, when we were going, like, oh, look at that big old board in the quality was awesome, but now you can do that at home. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, I don't know. Like there's just a way they've been stuck in their ways a little bit. It's just like, you can make this work, but
you've seen a lot of different things throughout your career. You worked at, what was it? KGL down in Southern Missouri.
Yeah. Like, off Highway 44, Lebanon, Missouri, because like, that was my first radio job. You kind of got to go somewhere that you don't want to go or somewhere in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? So yeah, did that for like a year, maybe. And then I was like 22, about to be 23. And I'm like, I got some time to mess around. Let's go to Chicago, see what that's all about,
Yeah. So what'd you do in Chicago when you moved up there? You work in radio again or?
No, I went to Second City, took the Second City comedy writing, looked into that. just bored in Lebanon, Missouri at that radio station, just online doing like the midnight shift. You know what I mean?
Typical radio in Midwest type.
Yeah. And then just kind of looking at it like, oh wow, like I never knew that there's a way to work in comedy. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of cool. Like there's people that do this. And it was so funny because like I went to Second City, did that, moved to Chicago, and I thought like, it'll be like a group of 10 of us and we'll be best buddies forever and we'll write and we'll work at Saturday Night Live. And it's just like, oh, it turns out there was maybe 800 more people who had that same idea, and it was just huge,
Yeah, but it was you learned a different skill set though. That's awesome.
Oh, for sure. The thing I learned, I took the writing classes, Second City. I didn't do really the improv acting. I took the writing classes, and the big thing I learned was just like point of view. That was like the biggest thing. Like when you're creating something, what's your point of view, and are you telling that same point of view throughout? You know what I mean? You can hear it in like a lot of good songs that are written. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally.
Like, and point of view was a big one. And and in comedy, there's always a want. That was the other thing I learned too. Like anything you watch in comedy, like everybody loves Raymond. Raymond wants to go golfing. What stops Raymond from going golfing? You know what I mean? And that's where the comedy is,
Yeah, there's an action and then there's some sort of form of interruption of the action.
Yeah. So I did that for a while. The Second City, did the writing classes, went through the program or whatever, got a certificate. I don't even know where that's at. And then I was just like, you know what? I like radio. This is cool. I liked what I learned, but I wanted to took what I learned and then put it into radio. So tried getting radio jobs again, moved back to Alton, Illinois near St. Louis, and just tried getting radio gigs again.
So, I mean, it wasn't quite starting from scratch because you had some time behind your resume.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you'd been away from it for a little bit. So how did it go when you got back into the game?
Oh, dude, I was just like interning everywhere. I was just like, you know what? Like, I'll just do this intern thing. And then when they ask what school I go to, I'll be like, I don't go to one. I'll just work for free, man. And it like worked like for 2 stations. And yeah, I mean, it didn't really go anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And when you're
St. Louis radio is so awesome. Like I love St. Louis radio. I grew up listening to it. There's just something about it I'll always like. I love it. And I just feel like, I don't know, at that time, and I don't blame them. Like working at a place like these people, they'd see some intern coming in. It doesn't even go to school anywhere. For like, who's this dude? And they're like putting their elbows out. Like
it's like Joe Dirt shows
you're not
up.
Taking my, you're not like, get away. You're not going to try to do my job, dude. Get out of here. Who is this guy? I'd felt, so that I did that for a little bit. And then I just ended up moving back to Chicago.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, radio's a grind, but that's the trick is just keep going at it. No matter what you do, like if you're in one place and it's not and that's the nice thing about it too. When you're moving up from a smaller, like your first radio job, Southern Missouri, you take a break for a little while. Like you said, you're still 23 years old or whatever at the time.
Yeah.
You still got time to jump back into it full throttle. But the thing I noticed about radio is it seems like, and just like any job that you do, whenever you jump back in, you're the new guy.
Right.
You're just going to be doing some of that grind work. You're going to be sitting in a production room, editing or doing something that nobody else wants to do. And that's totally that's just kind of the paying your dues part of radio. Right?
I tell you what, there was when I was in Lebanon, Missouri, there was this one dude who he got hired. He was like a late hire or whatever. I don't know. Like towards the end of my tenure there, he showed up and I was talking to him. And like I said, I was 23 and this dude was like maybe like 50 going on like 60 or something. And he's like, yeah, you ever done radio in Alaska? Like, no. And he's like, well, I've been there. I've been to Alabama. I've been here. I've been there. Like, oh my God. Like, okay, so maybe before I go down this road and maybe end up like this dude going everywhere across the country, I'm young. Let me try this Second City thing and see how that works.
It's definitely a profession where you want to keep a suitcase packed.
Oh man, he was like that Johnny Cash song. I've been everywhere, man.
Oh, that's making me chuckle. Too good. I just want to meet.
Like, I've been to Albuquerque, Arkansas, Minnesota, Nantucket, Alaska. Like, oh geez, I don't think I want to be like this guy. I don't know. Let me wait. Let me try some other things. Let me take a few risks before.
But I look at that guy and I have so much admiration for like the dedication to keep doing it. It's like if you're doing the radio thing and you go all over the country, because that was one thing I moved a couple times for radio jobs, but like I don't know that. I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be. I saw the Howard Stern movie Private Parts, and at the time when I was starting in radio, I was like, yeah, I'll move around for a couple years, but I don't want to have my whole life be every 5 years I live in a different city.
Yeah, you just
and
like
that's part of the radio game.
you just like shake out of it one day. You're like, oh my God, I'm 75, and you don't have like you're not married, no kids. You're like, ah, damn, radio got me.
Got the best of us, but it's all good, man. But that's the good thing about podcasting. I feel like podcasting can totally like. I'll bet that 70-year-old man still doing a podcast right now. That's the transition of a world we're living in.
Exactly. And I feel like, it's kind of cool, like to work in both, radio and podcasting. It's kind of neat. You know what I mean? Like, there's things about radio I'll always miss. I love the live aspect. Just knowing, I don't know, there's something just about radio that's awesome. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like I said, and there's a lot of the music stuff. I just wish more radio stations would maybe I don't know, go, hey, you know what? Maybe we're not going to play the same 8 songs all day. Let's hire some people to come in and talk or do something creative. You know what I mean? That's what I'm hoping for the future of radio.
Yeah. I think that radio will have that. And that's the big drastic change I was talking about. Like if they will actually do some things like that, then it'll be really good for radio. I think that it's got, because like you said, and I think Ryan Hoppy also said in a previous interview, radio is different than even video. Like you can watch a podcast and be entertained, but when you just hear it, when you're in your car and you're by yourself and you have your podcast on, you engage on a different level. And that's a really cool thing.
Oh, exactly. Like that's one thing I'm wrestling with like right now. Like I work on the Ben Joravsky show, right? And like we come from radio and there's just this, people want to see like video, you know what I mean? But a part of me is just like, I don't know, like there's things that like, just hearing it. Don't you want to, I don't know. We're just sitting here doing the show. Like just, you know what I mean? Just listen to it. Right.
No, I know. And the big reason why, and I'll say this for this podcast, the big reason why I wanted to do video with my guests was because I feel like there's a large section of young people that video just draws them more than audio. Like, I feel like if you have the same exact audio with the picture of you and me talking and they see you talking and engaged, for younger people, that visual stimulation, I feel like is more engaging just because they've been looking at screens for the last 10 or 15 years they've been alive. So realistically, it's playing to the market. It's looking at TikTok and spending time trying to understand what's going on in the mind of the young people these days.
And there are shows that like, it'll be video, but like they're doing a show and they'll have like, if they play a clip, they'll show the clip. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like, that's cool. Like, if you're providing something for people to see, that's awesome. But I mean, for the most part, it's just two guys just sitting there. Like, okay, like you want to see that? But there's things that like you don't catch, like if you're listening in audio. Yeah. Like for instance, like right now, Chris, I just passed you the basketball, hit the jumper. You made the shot. But if you see that, you're like, what? But you hear it. You know what I mean?
No, it definitely, it's almost more exciting to hear it and not see it. I understand what you mean. Like when you hear that sound and when you're doing the play-by-play and it's just on the radio, it's just an audio, it hits different, as the kids say. It just hits different.
It just hits different.
If the kids will allow me to use their terminology for a moment. Just hits different.
I do. Now give me the rock. Hold on. Oh, damn, I missed.
See, I don't have any great sound effects queued up, but I'm glad you do, and I appreciate you, Dennis. So as far as, and that's got me going on another thing, technology. Okay. So when we started, we had a lot of basic technology, but it was pretty cool. We could do phone editing and recording calls and things like that, and we could play some hotkey buttons or some sound effects, as some people call them. Now it's gotten to a point where for like $400, anybody can do that.
Right. Remember there was this thing called the 360.
Yeah. 360 editor systems. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh my God, this thing records phone calls.
The coolest
Your
piece of
phone does
equipment
that.
ever.
Yeah, technology has totally changed. It's made it so easy. Like you see them all the time. I'm using one, you're using one, the Rodecaster board. You see a lot of those around, and it just kind of has everything. So like, yeah, the technology. I remember I was in a band back in the day, and I remember like going to try to record an album. It seemed like so hard, and like you'd pay a lot of money, and this one guy would come. It just seems a lot easier now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean and I feel like it's whether you're talking music or you're talking radio and podcasting, things like that. I feel like it's totally changed the barriers to entry in a point where I don't know that I would go back and tell 17-year-old me if it was today. 17-year-old me comes up to me today and says, "Hey, I really think I want to get into radio." I want to tell him, "Hey, do what you love. If you love radio, do radio." But at the same time, I kind of want to tell him there's a lot of opportunity in these other forms of media that are basically the same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
literally almost everyone I've talked to that works in radio or has worked in radio has essentially said that podcasting is just a modern translation or equivalent of doing radio. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would recommend to them because I feel like things are changing so rapidly that I feel like if I were to tell them, "Oh yeah, go do podcasts or go do this," like I'm almost going to be behind it. Like they're going to be on some other level of next level of media.
Yeah. Or you can be like, all right, practice this sentence. Smash the like button.
Yeah, that's all
Put
you got to say.
them on YouTube. You know what I mean? That's a whole other
This video
medium.
is going to be on YouTube, so we got to say it for the algorithm. Smash that like button, everybody.
Smash the like button
Down there. Anyway.
But you know what I mean, though? Like,
yeah,
that's a whole other medium. Like, you know, should I go into radio or podcasting? I don't know, dude. Practice this. Smash the like button.
Yeah. Pretty much. It simplifies it down to
YouTube.
To a basic number. And like now all you have to have is an iPhone. Shoot, you can have an iPhone and have the biggest TikTok following, the biggest YouTube following.
Right.
You can do podcasts on Anchor. You can do all kinds of things from an iPhone. So it's and I shouldn't just say from an iPhone, from an Android as well.
But
I'm
like
not trying to throw out plugs.
But now what's going on too, and I'm seeing it like behind the scenes in the podcasting world, is that like a lot of big companies are like, you know, catching wind to it, and they're throwing their money behind like, you know, putting together audio samples, like audio campaigns and things like that. It's beyond like doing a podcast show or like, you know, things like that, where companies are investing in audio to be made, like, you know, and it's just like radio is just like, what? Wait, what is that? What are you talking about? They don't even know what that is. You know what I mean?
Because radio, I mean, and I think radio for the most part, the people who are holding out on stuff like that, on moving forward, are just the ones that have gotten so comfortable with the way things are and are scared that if they change, they'll be left behind.
Yeah.
And it's not a personal thing to anybody. It's literally, it's human instinct. It's human survival. It's literally people will push away things that might be good for them if they're scared. So it's one of those things where I think radio is going to do that to an extent. But I feel like anyone that's trying to get into radio, because it is such a difficult industry and because you always start as the low man on the totem pole. Isn't
that funny though? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, since you always start as low man on the totem pole, even if you do work a radio job, do a podcast of your own on the side, because that is going to be where you're going to be able to be yourself and do what you want and say what you want. Because when you're at that radio job, you are literally representing that corporation. And it is your job to do that to the best of your ability. But I would tell anybody thinking of getting into it at this point, do a podcast too, because you can do the same thing and you can be more genuine.
Yeah, absolutely. Just, you know, buy the equipment, you know, take the money out. If you can afford to get the equipment, just get the equipment, record yourself, you know, do a little show, learn like the technique of it. You know what I mean? Because there's a technique of hosting a show and talking and all that, you know, and just do it, you know. And I would say, like, you know, the Dr. Drew route, you know what I mean? Like, here's this dude, he knows all this other stuff, and then he gets into radio. You know what I mean? I think that may help you out a little more. Hey, go be a smart person and figure something out that a lot of people don't know about, and then do radio. You know what I mean? That I think that's a great route. That's the advice I'd give somebody.
I think that's great advice. And I think that comes out of what I was talking about earlier, which is confidence. Like, if you find something that you're good at, whether it's being a doctor or radio or baseball, when you find something you're good at, it makes you confident. And when you talk about it, you come across as confident. This is what part of the reason I wanted to have radio professionals on the show.
Yeah.
People that have been in radio and that are still plugging away at it 10 years later in some form or fashion, just are passionate about it. And you're not, it's hard to have a bad day at work or have a bad podcast, even if 7 people listen to this podcast. Like, I get to feel your passion coming through, and maybe those 7 people that watch will too. Like, maybe one person out there will be like, oh yeah, you know what? I will start a podcast, or you know what? I'm going to go to school for radio. Like, and that's a cool thing, because I think that we were all there at one point, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was just thinking, it's funny how this will go down. Like, so say radio does, like, decide, okay, we're going to do what podcasts do. You know what I mean? Like, and then they start doing it, right? And then the people are going to be like, oh, you're just copying podcasts. Like, no, actually, that was us. We started it. And like, we're radio, dude. Like, the murder mystery.
We're copying us.
Yeah, but now they've waited so long that people are going to be like, oh man, you're just copying podcasts. Like, no, actually, we started it.
Yeah, it's like when you hear a song that you're like, oh yeah, Aerosmith sang that song. You're like, oh no, some other band sang it 20 years before. And you're like, no.
Right.
Yeah, there's so much backlash. I get you.
Yeah, you're gonna be caught up, radio. That's gonna bite you in the booty.
Oh man. So right now, with where you're at and what you're doing, you're doing a lot of short form audio for news stations, or for local radio stations, I should say, right?
Yeah. I do the Anchorage Daily News.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the news in Anchorage.
Very, very
every day.
Every day. That's cool.
Yeah.
So they fly you out to Anchorage every single day?
Oh no. It's an actual newspaper, and they, they'll send me scripts, and I'll kind of editorialize the scripts a bit, and then I'll voice them and produce them, and yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, I think that's that kind of plays out of what we've been talking about with kind of media going to shorter form, whether it be from social media or just radio in and of itself being short between music breaks and things like that. There's a lot of opportunity in short form media now, because that's what you don't have to carry someone's attention necessarily for 5-10 minutes. If you can get them long enough to really engage for 15 seconds nowadays, it seems like the world's changed. Sorry, I'm fixing my microphone. Apologize for that audio.
All good, brother.
But I mean, what are some of the technological changes that you've seen recently? Like, I mean, obviously, if you're doing the news in Anchorage, you're sending your podcasts across the country. You're getting your news from them and just kind of revamping it, like you said. What other technological changes have you noticed, and what things do you see coming?
Well, I think, like a lot of industries, the pandemic, people are like, oh, wow, you can do this from home. You know what I mean? I think that's really been a game changer. Like right now, what I do, my girlfriend, bless her heart, she took her walk-in closet and just took all the clothes out, and now I just record in here. You know what I mean? I got like these,
you got some foam padding.
Yeah, I got those things going on. So, like I'm able to, record everything, and with, like we were talking about earlier, and I didn't mean to crap on audio music recorders and producers. I was like, oh, anybody can do it. It takes a lot of skill to do it. You know what I mean? But like, to have the access to like the board, like the great audio quality, it doesn't cost a lot of money. And you can make it work. You know what I mean? You can put it in a little case and travel somewhere and record and do your work from there. You know what I mean? Like, it's accessible, it's easy. I think that's a lot of the big technology change. Like we were talking about, like with radio, like you remember seeing like the board, like the audio board, you'd be like, oh my God, holy crap. What does that do?
25 faders and
you don't need all that. All you need, like, you know what I mean?
EQs and all kinds of knobs and switches.
Yeah. I'm looking at 4 faders right now, and I just got a few other things, you know what I mean? And that, I think that's the big shift. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think technology, I mean, it's basically gotten so, it had to get complicated before it could get simple again.
Yeah, like
the technology had to change to where you could just literally very easily change things on this four fader board that you've got to do almost all the same things you could do with a 32 or a 24 or a 16 faded
Yeah.
board in the past.
Like I look back at that and I'm like, are you Dr. Dre? Like, what are we doing? Like, you just this small little board I have with the quality, you know what I mean? It's just that's the big shift. Like, I wonder if you go into radio stations and I guess you'll always see the big giant board, right? I don't know.
I think it's scaling down to an extent, but I remember even during my first internship, I was 17 years old and I started at this radio station, and I walked in and saw the board, and they were like, "Yeah, this is a $250,000 board
Yeah.
from Germany."
We talk about how radio can make more money. Lose the big expensive boards.
Yeah, well, and then it was so hard because then when something broke on it, they had to send it back to Germany to get it fixed. So,
yeah.
so then you're using a dinky little old board to make things work when you could have just not spent 250. I don't know. I just feel like that kind of stuff to me blows my mind, because now when I see these boards, when I see a Roadcaster for $500 or whatever you can buy one for, and then I see those $250,000 boards, I'm like, well, they serve a purpose and they're nice. But that was, I think, the big, it was a fault of radio. I think at some point in the 80s and 90s, because things were going so well and there was so much money in the industry, it's like the dot-com boom. People thought it would never end, or the housing crisis, like housing boom. People thought it would never end. And then what happened? It ended. They had overspent on all this equipment and all these things. And then technology changed in 5 years, and it became affordable for regular people. So it's kind of like the like downloading music thing. It's like, well, people didn't really download music until they had computers and equipment and stuff that was efficient enough to do it. Same thing with making podcasts or making content. Now that people can do it, it's accessible.
Well, it's kind of like the cut and tape thing we were talking about in the beginning. Like, there was the cut and tape days, which, by the way, I would never be able to work in there. They'd fire me. And then they transitioned into, the whatever the hell, what is it called now? I don't know, like the
you would call
digital age. I don't know.
Yeah.
They transitioned into the digital age, and it's like, all right, I think
the non-linear age, I think, is one of the other terms.
There we go. I guess I wouldn't be able to work in that age either. I don't know what to call it. But now I think, we're ready for that next jump, maybe. You know what I mean? Like,
totally. Yeah, I think that we're ready for another jump, and I don't know what it's going to be, because
less is more. Less is more. I think that should be, if you get any lesson from what's going on with podcasting, like, less is more. You don't need like WJCB. You don't need like
KAPY.
Yeah, like, cool. It gives me nostalgia. That's cool. But like, you're seeing podcasts doing way less and getting way more listeners. You know what I mean? Like, invest to what the content is. You know what I mean? Like, that would be my advice. Like, less is more. Like, wow, don't try and reinvent the wheel, because the people that are killing it over here, they're just doing what you guys did, like, in the very beginning, radio murder mysteries. Like, that's all, like, you hear these murder mystery things going on, like, Yeah,
no, it's exactly. I mean, it's all evolution, and it's all new versions of the same stuff. So it's just getting stations and getting personalities to adapt. I think that's how you survive in this world, in this industry.
Yeah. Less is more, like that would, and also too, like, I know we're kind of skipping back and forth here, but like, as far as like giving advice to someone who wants to like get into this, like, get a nice board, like we were saying, like, if you can afford it, like a nice little Roadcaster, you know what I mean? This interview brought to you by Roadcaster Pro. Really
not sponsored, I promise.
We really put in there, they should be. But okay, I'll tell you a little story. When I was in radio in Lebanon, Missouri, there was this guy that worked there by the name of McNasty. All right, McNasty from Chicago, worked in Lebanon, Missouri, and I learned something from him, because we were a country radio station. All right, country music. We would do like local news. it looked like my grandma's house, this place where we ran the station out of, like, but they made so much money with like these little like 10-15 second ads. Like, what? But I've never heard of that until I went, 15 I've heard of, but these like tons of 10-second ads, like, get your chickens down at the cackle hatchery and get them eggs, you know what I mean? Like local country. Anyway, so McNasty, he loved NASCAR. He loved it. On his side time, he'd go to NASCAR shows or he'd watch it on TV or go to the dirt track races or whatever, right? And then he combined his love for what he did on the radio. He would reach out to these race car drivers and like interview them, like NASCAR drivers and stuff. They would do interviews on this show. So he combined what he loved with what he was doing. So I would say to get into this, like, do that. Like, just if you really like basketball, or if you really like bodybuilding, I don't know, like, record like, some stuff of you talking about what you like, you know what I mean? And just keep doing it and you'll probably get really good at it. And the next thing you know, you're ready to have a show and you can maybe, pitch your stuff out there.
Yeah. And even if you don't, you'll be more confident in your life.
Yeah.
Like, cause you'll have something and you'll be sharing it with people and you feel comfortable sharing it with people. That's the thing. A lot of people, I think when they try something new or when they're doing something, they don't want to share it with people because they're scared of what that person might or might not think of them based off of that. And it's like, it's just do it. Just do it. And then if people like it, they like it. If they don't like it, they don't like it.
Yeah. Like that's going to happen. Like also too, like, hey, I remember, telling like these stories. I remember my friend Derek, he, when I did stand up for the first time, I was like so nervous, right? I'm like, oh my God, and my buddy was just like, hey, listen, dude, guess what? You're gonna suck. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, dude, you're gonna suck. So just go up there, suck, and then keep going up there. And then you won't suck so much the more you keep doing it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like that's kind of what it is. Like you're going to have that feeling. And even there's going to be times where you think you're killing it, doing awesome. And then you're going to have like a bad show and you're going to feel like you need to take a cold shower. That lasts for a few days and you just keep doing it. You know what I mean?
It's a roller coaster, but that's what.
Don't be afraid to bomb. Don't be afraid to, yeah.
No, because that's the thing. The worst thing that could happen when you bomb is you pick yourself back up. And that's not even such a bad thing.
Yeah. Like just don't be afraid to fall flat on your face because it's going to happen,
Totally, man. That's great advice. I don't know if I could have said it any better. So I'm glad you did.
Yeah. And there's like some kind of weird thing that people like kind of like about, like, it's like a car wreck or something that they like kind of watching it. It's weird. Like, so, don't worry about it. People kind of like it nowadays. Like that was one thing I wanted to talk with you about. I know we're talking a lot here, but like talking about how like when we were kids and we would listen to radio, there would be like, man, how do they do that? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's gone now, like that's another thing with radio. Like the jig's up. Everybody kind of knows what you're doing and they're doing it at home and, and they're like, just recording two guys just sitting there. Like if Siskel and Ebert were around and they saw that like these two dudes sitting in their house with like a bong on the table or something, or talking about movie reviews and it's getting millions of views, they would roll over in their grave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they had like a room with like producers and makeup people. Like they did all of this big production to make this show about talking about movies. And then now on YouTube,
two guys in a closet.
Two dudes in it just getting millions of views. You know what I mean? Like
it's crazy. I mean, but that's that evolution. And that's why stations and media needs to continue to evolve with it. Because if we don't, it's realistically, like you said in the beginning, and this kind of comes full circle, you're trying to connect with people. And that's really what it is. As people evolve, their habits change. Like I told this story on a previous podcast here today. But do you remember when I was in college with a young man named Dennis Schetter, went by the name DJ at the time.
Yeah.
And he was DJ the DJ, which was
my middle name's Joseph. It's like
to me was the coolest thing ever.
My name was actually DJ.
Actually DJ. Yeah. This is not some made up radio malarkey. But we were doing a morning show And you guys, you, myself, and another co-host had come up with some bits that were relatively funny, and we always thought they were funny, but we didn't get a lot of reactions right away because you're doing college radio. You don't have a million listeners,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, well, you feel like you're kind of doing it for yourself. It kind of felt like a podcast because it was like, okay, a couple people know who we are and what we're doing, but this is kind of just our little thing.
Yeah.
And then we got a message
From
a
Tom at
from a
MySpace.
gentleman named Tom
Yeah.
at MySpace. And this is my point to kids that have a podcast and see small numbers. Small numbers don't always mean the smallest impact. So we had done this radio bit, and apparently Tom, and this is not some fake scammer or anything. This was legitimately Tom, the creator of MySpace, said he was driving across the country and he heard something that we had done on the air and thought it was hilarious, which is
Right.
essentially the gist of his comment. And to me, at that moment, because this is 2003, 4, something like that. To me,
Yeah.
at that point, that was like I would have traded 1 million views for that one person. So just because you're not making as big of a splash as you think you're making doesn't mean you're not having an impact. So just do what you're doing, and it will eventually somehow pay off for you, whether it's financially or even just in little stuff like that. Because I think that was one of the big motivators that kept me going at a time when it was hard to work and do radio and do school and all those things. But then you have one little bit of like encouragement or something like that happens that you didn't expect, and it wasn't somebody that's like your friend or your mom or whatever, and it just pushes you further. Right.
Yeah. And just have fun, that's a big part of it too.
That's the trick. The whole trick is be genuine and have fun, because
Right.
that's the thing. Because you're gonna have to keep doing it. It doesn't mean that like Tom from MySpace or Mark Zuckerberg is gonna listen to your podcast or something like that. But it definitely, like, just keep doing what you're doing, and eventually somebody that you value's opinion will really will appreciate it to a point where it becomes beyond just you. Like beyond just, oh, I enjoy this for me, but when you really impress somebody that you feel like, oh man, like maybe I'm not just this small town person in this small town my whole life. Like little things like that. If you do a podcast, if you work at a radio station that's in a small market, like little things can be a big deal. So don't overlook the small stuff, I guess, is what I was saying.
Yeah. And I say, take like radio classes and, learn that stuff. Even if you like, don't want to work in radio, because there's a lot more options to do it. But I mean, there's a lot more options than radio now. You know what I mean?
But the skills that you can learn with radio will help you in casting or anything else you want to do in life. It really is
and I tell you what, like I remember in school, like the news, like, every hour a student would have to read the news. You know what I'm talking? Remember that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I read some news at
turns out that was the future of radio.
Yeah.
Like those little dry, news reports at the top of the hour where you're just, kind of talking and giving people updates. That's like short form audio. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, basically a quick 2-minute news brief is super valuable. And it's kind of like how phones were big and then got small and now they're big again.
Right.
It's kind of one of those resurgence of the old.
Like, and if someone were to come in like from the future or something, was like, guess what? That's going to be huge when you're older. Like, what, you mean the news person talking about what's going on for the day? Yeah, right. Get out of here. But no, yeah, it's totally right.
No, it's definitely the way it's gone. And
I mean, that boring news that was like, we want to rock, man. Come on. That's the future.
I want my top 40 radio, man. I want to hear this new stuff. No, it's basically, and it's relevant to people, and because there's so many different, I think, and this is just my opinion, but because there's so many different ways that people can absorb media now.
Yeah.
News has kind of taken over that radio slot, because it's like the people who are still interested in radio and are still engaged in it are totally going to listen to it. And those people are not as out of touch as a lot of people think, because the people that listen to radio, that people are thinking, oh, they'll never listen to podcasting and they'll never do this. Guess what? Grandma has a Facebook,
right?
Grandma has an Instagram. Grandma probably even has some smartphone apps that you don't think that she might have. So,
and to take it back to McNasty, I feel like he kind of had a grip on the future of it too. Like, find a lane, you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
If you find something that, like, you know, not a lot of people are talking about, and you become like a credible source for it, you know, that people will kind of, you know, they'll draw to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Like, I'm trying to think of just like some, you know, lane that no one's talking about, but dude, if I can find out what it is, I'm going to go do it. You know what I mean? I don't know what that, you know, everybody's got their own little thing, you know,
wood whittling.
That goes back to like the Dr. Drew thing I was talking about. Like, learn some stuff, find out like a craft or some kind of thing, you know, some specialty, and then do some media and, like, you know, have that lane, you know?
Yeah. Oh, totally. I always tell my little brother, he's big into motorcycles, and I'm like, hey, I know that like you don't feel like you're a media person, but if you spend all this time working on motorcycles and you can talk about them, and like that's engaging for people. And to some people that might not have a bike to work on, just watching you work on a bike or talk about a bike or out there riding might be engaging for somebody. So it's like people that didn't think that don't think that they're content creators really are and really can be. And I think that's a big differentiator too over the past.
Yeah, and if it's not good, people like watching that too, like cringy stuff. They
Car
like
crashes,
that.
man.
They love it. Yeah, man. So just go for it.
Like if you make the worst thing in the world and you think nobody's gonna see it, that's when it will go viral.
Yeah.
People will be like, "Look how dumb this is," and then you'll have like, "Oh man, it went viral."
Isn't that funny? Like, I think we just cracked the code here on how this works nowadays. Like, you don't want to be in the middle. You don't want to be like sort of good. You want to be like really good or really bad. That's how you get attention.
Oh man, all I'm hearing in my head, and I don't want to say this out loud because I don't want to make anyone who likes this song feel bad, but all I'm hearing in my head is Gangnam Style right now.
Yeah.
So good or so bad, but
None of this middle stuff.
No, you want to be at the top of the heap or 6 feet under.
Yeah, like for some reason we're obsessed with that. I don't know what that is.
That's humanity, my friend. It's humanity. But I don't want to take up any more of your time because we're literally pushing up here pretty close to the 1 hour mark. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add? Obviously, I'm going to give you time to plug here at the end as well. But any advice or anything else that you think that I didn't cover that we can share with the people?
You know, I think we informed. I hope we entertained. I think we did all right, my man.
We dined. We danced. We had a good time. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this, and they can find Dennis. You can actually Ben Jarofsky Show. You can find it online, correct?
Yeah, chicagoreader.com. chicagoreader.com /Jarofsky. That's JORAVSKY. That's where you can find the Ben Jarofsky Show. A lot of Chicago politics that we talk about, a lot of interviews with the go-getters of the city of Chicago. I don't know what I'm talking about. The city of Chicago. The movers and shakers. That's what I want.
As I say, I like to use the phrase movers and shakers.
That's what I want.
Like it's overused.
The movers and shakers of Chicago's political scene. All right. Yeah. So check that out. And also, if you ever want to find out what's going on in Anchorage, baby, I'm your guy. Anchorage Daily News, wherever you download podcasts.
There you go. All right. Thanks so much for your time again, Dennis. And
thank you.
Have a great rest of your evening. You got to work the rest of the night?
I got to work at 7. So I got to work in 30 minutes.
Okay. Well, I hope that you have a good shift. Thank you so much again. And if you ever need anything, just give me a holler. We'll do this again sometime.
All right, buddy. That was fun.
All right. Thank you so much, man. All right. Another great media shift in the books. I also want to thank again our musical guests, Pseudo Slang. They're not actually in studio, but they did give us the rights to use this music in the studio. So thanks, guys.
Really, really ready. Come on, no, you're not. Really, really ready. No.
Get ready.
All right, dog. We good.
Cool.
Stop
Wait.
recording. You good? What's up?
Yeah, that was awesome, dude.